All right. So today I have the pleasure of being joined by Prashanth on the show. Prashanth, thanks so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Thanks for having me, Stefan.
Of course. So yeah, as the show usually goes, the first question that I usually toss to people is to discuss, the beginning of their Bitcoin journey. And for everybody, that's different. It can be even before you discovered Bitcoin, things that kind of led up to the discovery that kind of primed you to maybe understand Bitcoin. But from each perspective, it's unique, right? So I'd love to hear a bit about, in your own words, how you would describe the beginning of your Bitcoin journey and, what exactly happened.
Sure. It was back in 2017. So during the time where prices were going up and everyone talked about Bitcoin around me. So I was in college, final years of my graduation, and one of my friends were like, it was like uh, continuously going on and on about this new blockchain technology and how Bitcoin is digital gold. So
Mhm.
that's how I first heard about Bitcoin, but it didn't. I didn't really dive deep into like understanding what the technology is. So once I graduated and I was working as an intern in startups, and then I wanted to uh, like explore Bitcoin because my friend is continued working in blockchain companies back then, and that kind of kept me in loop about the technology in the space. So I started with a book, Mastering Bitcoin, so
Mhm.
by Andres Antonopoulos. So that was my first actual introduction to Bitcoin, and yeah. So the fact, like, so the book is written beautifully. It's explaining how exactly the technology works,
Yeah.
and the fact and the design of how Bitcoin works just blew my mind. And then I was like, wait, this is possible. There's no flaws here,
Mhm.
and everything working with encryption and proof of work. So that's where I wanted to. I was sure that I want to work on this technology, and I believe this would be the future of money. So money that suits internet or money that is built for internet. And that's when I was looking for jobs in Bitcoin space back then. And I was fortunate to find one of the founders building consumer products, payments product for Europeans back then. And then I joined as an engineer. That's where I've been working in Bitcoin space since then. And that's how I got into the Bitcoin space. It was back in 2019.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been almost 6 years.
Yeah, very cool. And yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Mastering Bitcoin. Well, Andreas and Antonopoulos in general, also for me, was a huge influence when I first discovered Bitcoin. And I think because I'm not an engineer like yourself, I went to business school. I come from more a business background, but the beauty about Andreas Antonopoulos' books and especially Mastering Bitcoin is it builds in layers. So even if you're not technical, for me, which I wasn't, I was still able to understand it very well and kind of build that technical foundation that I think you need to understand Bitcoin. But I think since you are coming from an engineering background, I guess it's a bit more easy for you to understand kind of the technological concepts, right? Because you're familiar with how these things typically work. What specifically about Bitcoin, stood out to you as like being different than things you had maybe read about or learned about before? And also a caveat on that question I'm curious about, because you mentioned that your friend was kind of more in the blockchain space, right? So did you ever have any um, let's say like a crypto phase, right? Because I think a lot of people kind of come to it and say, oh yeah, crypto, not Bitcoin. And then once you start to realize and learn more about the technology, you kind of lean towards Bitcoin. But what was that like in your experience?
So my journey started with exploring blockchain, not Bitcoin specifically. So
Hmm.
it's like this concept called blockchain. I need to understand what it does, and I started with Bitcoin,
Yeah.
and I stuck with Bitcoin because once I joined Lastbit, the company was named Lastbit. That was a startup that I joined as a backend engineer, and the founder was Bitcoin Maxi, and he said,
Mm.
"There's Bitcoin, and everything else is shitcoin. So there's only proof of work, and don't worry about anything else. Just focus on Bitcoin. It's enough." And yeah, that's the kind of start I got, and then I didn't really bother. Like, not like I had much idea of what's happening outside. I just continue working on Lightning, Bitcoin, wallets, and all the features that we built for consumers. But yeah, eventually, when just before starting Bringin, like that's when my friends, my friend was like in like there's an entire new world called Web3. That time the concept of Web3 was
Mm-hmm.
there, and so you need to explore that. There's a lot more you can do with Bitcoin, more than Bitcoin, and then there's a whole new universe you need to explore. I'm sure you'll be excited. And I had a phase of course, as an engineer. I did went to Ethereum conferences and to understand what's happening there, and there was a lot of energy around builders building a lot of cool stuff and things like that. It took a while. So I've been I started bringing, and then I was in the phase of exploring technologies, and then working on these hackathons, and then it didn't take much time for me to realize there's a lot of noise around everything, and then it just you could just sense it, and then once you start focusing on Lightning and then show demonstration with Lightning, and the community start accepting and pulling the product out of you, and then you understand yeah, there's some kind of ease and sense of relaxation when you come back to Bitcoin and then focus on Bitcoin only. And then, yeah, it's and a lot of other factors kind of made sense, because like you got to work on hard money. You fix the money, fix the world. You don't have to build an entire new internet. And at least we're not in a phase to do that yet. And Bitcoin is backed by proof of work, and I don't see any of the other technologies out there which is backed by proof of work and energy, as Bitcoin does. And yeah, it didn't take much time for me to get back to Bitcoin and focus.
Yeah. And that's an important distinction that you make there about the proof of work. Because yeah, Bitcoin is really the only cryptocurrency that actually still has that proof of work in place, and that's actually at a scale where the proof of work is makes it super indestructible. Essentially, Bitcoin's hash rate is at extreme highs, and the computing power that's built into the network is absolutely astounding. Do you, because part of the focus of the podcast is to explain and help also beginners understand what Bitcoin is and why it's important. Um, Proof of work is something that's really fascinating, but that's also difficult to understand, especially if maybe you're not coming from an engineering background or have any knowledge of cryptocurrencies or how these systems work. I'm curious from an engineer's words, an engineer's perspective, how do you typically, if you do, how do you typically explain, how proof of work works, and the importance of that, especially as it relates to, a cryptocurrency or Bitcoin?
Yeah, for sure. So most of the money, or the forms of money that we have seen recent past, is either it's not backed by anything, it's controlled by a centralized entity, or like institutions, governments, or like usually more involved. Governments have a lot more involvement in money. So it's not backed by anything. It's few people making decisions. And when you explore other cryptocurrencies, again, there's institutions running some blockchains which they control the supply, and there's no fixed supply. So the Bitcoin is the only money which is backed by energy. So there is some kind of hard work that is required, computational work, which is required to add value to the network. So that computational work can be translated from any of the source of energies. It could be solar and wind energy, or any forms of energy can be converted to this to extract this computational power to power the network. So this is the money which is backed by energy. So finally, we have money which is backed by something, backed by energy, and it's not controlled by anyone. It's censorship resilient. It is decentralized. It can be used by anyone in the world to move value from any corner to any corner without seeking permissions, without needing a huge institutions to power your transfer of funds. You just need a piece of software that's on your phone to do so.
Yeah. No, and it is, very revolutionary, the technology and everything it represents. So you mentioned, when you discovered Bitcoin, you also quickly transition to working on Bitcoin. What was that early experience like? And if you are able to talk about it, what was kind of the product and the company that you were working for?
Sure. So for John for becoming like the first engineer or the first backend engineer for the company, my assignment was to build a Lightning interface for a Lightning node. So I heard Lightning first time from the founder. His name is Prashanth. And yeah, it was a fun experience, like trying to understand Lightning, and then completed the assignment, got into the job, and the company at back then was focusing mainly on making Lightning payments possible with mobile apps. So, and also they were working with a debit card, Mastercard debit card that can be funded with Lightning. So we were able to get it live. We built and pushed the first Mastercard debit card in the world that can be funded by Lightning transfers. So my job was mainly backend engineer, focusing on infrastructure and interacting with banking APIs, interacting with customers and customer support channels.
Yeah. So it was a Lightning Network company, right? What because you had a pretty quick transition, I would say, from learning about Bitcoin to working in Bitcoin, and then also going to a layer two technology on Bitcoin. For my listeners who may not be aware of what the Lightning Network is, how do you explain that to them?
Sure. So Bitcoin is not practical to use for retail payments. It's when you have a Bitcoin wallet to pay small payments like €5 or €10 payments to the merchant. It's not practical because the payment takes about 10 to 20 minutes, and it costs another $5 to $10, and that can vary depending on the network state. So it's not practical or the user experience is really bad to pay with Bitcoin. And Lightning solves this problem. So it's cheaper and it's instant. It's a layer 2 network that abstract a lot of complications that comes with Bitcoin, layer 1, to make the payment more efficient. So you can make payment as less as or even lesser than 1 cent. All happens instantly with a lot lesser fees or negligible fees.
Yeah.
That's a Bitcoin payment is possible with Lightning, and it's again decentralized global.
Mm-hmm.
That's the characteristics of Bitcoin.
Yeah, and I mean the Lightning Network is a revolution on top of Bitcoin, and I think a lot of the critiques that Bitcoin gets are mostly around for people depending where they're coming from, obviously. But I think one of the big critiques that Bitcoin gets is around its speed and the block size and all those things, and saying that like Bitcoin is great, but you can't pay for a coffee with Bitcoin if it takes 10 minutes to settle the transaction. And yeah, so the Lightning Network is really a fundamental innovation on top of Bitcoin. You're working at the startup, and then you started your own company, Bringin. Explain a bit that process, and also why you decided to take that leap. What gap in the market you maybe saw, and what led you to really start, Bringin.
Sure. So as I told before, we were building, we had this debit cards that can be funded with Bitcoin, and then you can pay with Bitcoin anywhere. But
But
back
this
then,
was at your other company, or this was
yes, it
yeah.
was other company. It was called Lastbit. So the product was live, and I earned in Bitcoin. So I got paid in Bitcoin. I used to like liquidate using Lightning Network and pay everywhere. But back then, the company, like we built the infrastructure, like plugging into multiple partners, and then it was just not scalable. Working with multiple licensed partners, it had multiple KYCs in the app, and then it was expensive for the consumers because like everything was layered on top of each other, like the services. So it was just not scalable for mass markets, and even the market was not matured. Like not many people were using Bitcoin back then. So to solve this user experience, like we had to get our own licenses as a startup. We started applying for our own licenses in Estonia, And as we were going through the process of getting license, so the company decided to focus more on the infrastructure, like the compliance and all the other tools that is needed for building Lastbit again. So to suppose companies like Lastbit, because we understood exactly what it takes, what pain it takes to like put all these things together and build a good consumer product. But they focused on infrastructure, and then back then I was still getting paid in Bitcoin, and we unfortunately had to stop the product. Like the product ceased to exist. We couldn't support anymore because we were transitioning to our own licensing, and I couldn't liquidate Bitcoin. So I tried to it was so difficult to liquidate Bitcoin. I had to move my funds from on-chain wallet to Binance, and then I blocked 20 minutes to go to all this UX, which I still don't understand. And then and I had to convert it to euros and make transfer to only wait for a couple of days or even more on the weekends uh, to receive a notification from Revolut, hey, where is this coming from? So it risked my only bank account I had back then. So the entire overall experience was cumbersome. It took almost 3 to 4 days, and like I received notifications from my bank account. It's not. It's and there were no other alternatives. Kraken had all did SEPA withdrawals, and there were a lot of other crypto debit cards coming into the market that take custody of Bitcoin and then give cashback against it or something like that. So there were no tools for Bitcoiners or like people like me who own in Bitcoin to leave on Bitcoin or to liquidate or just to like spend Bitcoin, which I think was extremely fundamental. And I wanted to start, I wanted to build this product and tools myself. So using the existing infrastructure, I want to build a technology company around this to facilitate this. So that's how Bringin came into picture. So the first product is to solve my own problem. 3-page interface where you can like send Bitcoin from any wallet, and you can get euros into any bank account instantly. And we provide a virtual bank number in your own name so that your banks don't flag your transfers coming from your own IBAN account. So it's completely safe. So that's the MVP. We moved more than 5 million euro worth Bitcoin. It works. So we're all getting ramped up with more features to come out of the beta.
Yeah, that's a great story. And I mean, I think the best way to create a business is like you said, right? You solved your own problem. And I think it's a struggle that many people, including myself, kind of have, right? Especially if you're mostly are all in Bitcoin, if you're earning Bitcoin, if you're living on Bitcoin, there's still like this awkward gap between, and I explain it a lot like this way, you're, as a Bitcoiner, you feel like you're living in the future. It's like driving a car when there was horse and carriage, it's like, this is where we're going, but the infrastructure is not in place yet. It's like trying to drive a Ferrari on a dirt road, it's like, yeah, it can work here and there, but it's going to be clunky. It's going to be annoying, and it's probably not going to be the best experience. So typically you still want to interact with the old system. Most people still have to, pay for their groceries in fiat, pay for their rent in fiat, pay for most things in fiat, because most people don't accept direct Bitcoin payments yet. So I do think that's a really big, problem. Along with the fact, obviously, I think that there's another aspect to it, which is like you have one problem where it's like the feasibility of making those transactions, So I think the beauty of being, in Bitcoin already is you recognize how easy it is. If you have a Lightning wallet, even if you have on-chain Bitcoin, you load a certain portion of that onto a Lightning wallet, and you can send money anywhere instantaneously without an intermediary. People receive the funds instantly. You can transact with someone across the world. You can transact with someone standing next to you. Doesn't matter. So there's one where it's like the technology is superior in Bitcoin, right? Even though we're still very early in Bitcoin, and I think that it's going to be more and more built around making that even more seamless. But then, yeah, it's kind of like you said, you're still dealing with the old system where most of the vendors, landlords, whatever, don't accept Bitcoin. How has your experience been like, when you made this MVP? Um, how, well, maybe explain to people, how is the experience in general, trying to live off of Bitcoin and really use it as like a day-to-day currency as well?
For sure. So like I use Bringin. I'm all in Bitcoin. I don't hold euros at all. So we are constantly working on tools and features to make this experience extremely smooth. So as you rightly said, like so no one accepts Bitcoin yet, and that's a great analogy, like driving a Ferrari, and in the places sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. So it almost feels like you're living in the future with Bitcoin wallet. So that's exactly what you want to solve. So if you're holding Bitcoin, being a Bitcoiner, or like having complete advantage of Bitcoin, you need to be able to interact with real world, pay for goods and services on a daily basis, or pay rent, or even do large purchases. So Bringin provides suite of tools, and we are optimizing for the features as I mentioned before. So my user experience is like this: I use Blue Wallet to receive salary in Bitcoin, and then I hold like spendable sats in like 100 200 euros in Lightning Wallet. So I use both. Like sometimes I use Albi
Mm,
or I use Breeze, which is an integrated wallet. I can just transfer funds from my Blue Wallet to Mr. Breeze, and then the sats always stays in Lightning Wallet. And I just send funds to my debit card at the time of payment. So we have recently launched a feature called we recently launched Lightning addresses. So this is not a typical Lightning address. It looks like an email address. Users can send funds, send Bitcoin to it, and it instantly converts Bitcoin to euro. So I can just open any wallet, type Prashanth at Bringin.xyz, send 100 euros, or anyone can just send me 100 euros worth of Bitcoin from any of the wallets, from anywhere in the world. It's just available on my debit card to spend. So we have a debit card. So this is my workflow of how I spend Bitcoin. So my Bitcoin is in Bitcoin wallet, and it reaches my debit card only when I want to spend.
mm-hmm.
And if I want to get pay rent or anything like that, I get it to my Revolut account. So I fund my Euro account with Bitcoin, which instantly converts to Euro, and I can withdraw to any of my bank accounts. So we support instant transfers, which means there's no delay between funds reaching from your bank to your bank account. And since they see the transfer is coming from the name in your own account, they don't block or they don't have issues. So it's a reliable tool to move funds from bank to Bitcoin or Bitcoin wallet to bank accounts without any problem. And of course, debit card for the people who want to live on Bitcoin like me can leverage the products to the fullest.
Yeah, it's really cool what you guys are doing, and I think one, the debit card, just being able to send funds over to the debit card and then be able to spend directly, through the Visa debit. But also, I think the bank feature, being because sometimes it's good to have it on a debit card, but sometimes maybe if you want maybe a bit more significant funds, say you're taking your salary in Bitcoin, but you still want to maybe convert a portion of that to euros upon receiving your salary. It's good to be able to have that on a different bank account. So I think the SEPA, the virtual bank account, the virtual IBAN is a really neat feature. What is some of like the feedback that you've gotten maybe from users or just in general on how they are how they use Bringin and kind of what their experience has been?
Bringin is like right now we're building tools for people who already hold Bitcoin and to make their life easier. I feel like this or people who hold Bitcoin have been neglected. So like traditionally you see exchanges that involve that is built for traders, like who constantly trade and make money with cryptocurrencies and all that. And there was second generation of products that can like invest in cryptocurrencies. You press a button and it goes to custody. So like the people who already hold Bitcoin in self custody, they lack tools. So that's where like we primarily want to focus and build a suite of tools or a suite of tools to make their life easy. So there are users, so the people who hold Bitcoin. So typically like people who have been holding Bitcoin from a long time and wants to retire on Bitcoin, they want to liquidate and buy, do purchases for buying a house or like liquidate every month on a regular basis too. live on it. So those are our primary customers, beta customers, like the people who have bought Bitcoin long back and they're still holding it in their self custody. And second type of users are like users like me who earn in Bitcoin or who wants to live on Bitcoin standards. So they are typically like engineers or who run their own Lightning node that deep into the technology. So they either miners or they run a node or they earn in Bitcoin or they're familiar with Lightning. So they often use it for debit cards. Like they can connect the debit card to the Lightning node using Nostro Wallet Connect. And yeah, they spend on daily basis. They live on Bitcoin standards. And there are like recently we have been onboarding more customers who wants to buy Bitcoin because like they buy Bitcoin like a couple of thousands every month. We don't have a DCA feature, but I don't think that is necessary for our customers at the moment because they're already holding Bitcoin and they're living on that. And the new customers who wants to buy huge chunk at the same time because of the banking features, they want more reliability. They move huge chunk to their wallets.
Mm.
So that's another kind of users. So the feedback has been reliable. It works fast. So most surprising feedbacks initially were like they send the Bitcoin from the Lightning wallet and they receive euros into Revolut in MAP and they're like, oh wow, I just already received it. It feels like magic. So just going and tweeting about the product, it feels like magic was really encouraging back then. So feedback has been good so far. So we're just like iterating and improving the product experience with mobile apps, authentication systems, with biometric, and just making the process smoother.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really cool to hear. I think another important topic that I think is, well, one thing that I want to, I'm curious, for your perspective on is because there's kind of like two camps. I feel like well, there's a bunch of different camps in Bitcoin, let's say, but there's, I think, two ideologies that people tend to go by. One is like, okay, Bitcoin, it's more like maybe like the Michael Saylor approach, right? It's like, keep Bitcoin, don't spend your Bitcoin until later in the future when it's appreciated to more of its like realistic where we all know it's going to go in the future, and kind of use fiat and there's different strategies, right? I know people who find different ways to get into debt, and I'm not recommending people get in debt. I'm not saying that these are good strategies, but you have kind of like the fiat camp where it's like save Bitcoin, don't touch your Bitcoin, try to find other ways, and obviously earn an income. Don't just live off of your Bitcoin unless you perfectly can. And then there's the other part where it's like, no, I'm in Bitcoin and I'm also going to live on a Bitcoin standard as you are. From your perspective, since you're kind of in the Bitcoin standard camp, which I really respect, how do you deal? Because I guess one of the biggest things right now still is, right, like Bitcoin is volatile. We see it, even today. I think Bitcoin is down 3K from where it was yesterday, which, I mean, it's not extremely significant, but it's still, the dollar on a daily basis, at least, is not changing that much, or the euro. So how do you deal with that kind of mindset and that volatility that's ingrained in Bitcoin? And also, how do you deal with, because it's kind of going back to also like, the famous story of Bitcoin Pizza Day and the guy who spent, 10,000 Bitcoin for two pizzas. Maybe in the future, you're going to look back and say, oh, I was using Bitcoin on a daily basis. If I had maybe saved that Bitcoin, it would be worth X, right? So how do you kind of like, deal with those types of thoughts and the volatility aspect as well?
You're right. There are like different camps of people. So that's okay. That's how Bitcoin is for everyone, and
Yeah.
it can be used by different people for different various reasons. And it also depends on the context, right? So, for example, like Bitcoin for people in India is an anti-inflationary money, so they wouldn't save anything in INR, which is losing a lot of value. Indian national rupees. If they hold it in Bitcoin, it will be super helpful. And of course, they cannot spend in Bitcoin because majority of the population is in middle class. They live from paycheck to paycheck. Like 14 to 15% variations of their income vastly impacts their living conditions. So it's probably not good for them. Like it's best if they can have savings in Bitcoin. So as an anti-inflationary money. So probably most of the it depends on the context of the lifestyle and how much understanding they have about Bitcoin, or how much do they want to bet on Bitcoin as a technology,
Mm.
or how much do they value Bitcoin, or where do they live, and a lot more other factors. So there's no right thing or wrong thing to do. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't advise anyone to do a particular thing. I can just talk for myself, like exactly why living on Bitcoin Standard is important, is beneficial for me, or like why I live on Bitcoin Standard. There should be a reason for this, right? So it's so like we see a lot of charts about inflations, right? Like price of certain object, or like going higher and higher when it's accounted in dollars and everything like that. So like this, like when you hold any fiat currency that deflates, or that loses value over time, you always associate an opportunity cost with that, right? So you're holding that, and there's an opportunity cost with it. So, and you're paying that opportunity cost for the convenience, right? So you like it gives you facilities, like debit card just works with any merchants, right? That's that you're paying the opportunity cost because of convenience, and you can afford to do that as well because of the like you can afford to do that because you can only afford to do that because you can't absorb the volatility risks. But the value or the opportunity cost of holding fiat currencies or any other currencies apart from Bitcoin, like compounds over time. Like I've been living from paycheck to paycheck, and of course my life is impacted with Bitcoin price change. 10% of my entire saving is increase or decrease, but it doesn't decrease as a whole because I spend it on a daily basis. If Bitcoin price goes 15% extra, and when
Mm.
half of my month is remaining, that doesn't exactly impact on 50% of my lifestyle. It
Yeah.
impacts on 7% of my lifestyle, right? So it's like you start living on Bitcoin standards, and eventually you will end up having with more funds than what you earn,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how you start savings as well. So over a period of time, you start savings in Bitcoin, and then when you convert it back to euros, it's like, okay, how did I end up doing this? It doesn't mathematically add up. So yeah, so it compounds if you start thinking in Bitcoin terms. You hold all your currencies in Bitcoin. It
Mm-hmm.
allows you to do more in your life sometimes. Yeah, it again, I'm not an advocate, but we want to make it easier. Like I told about the opportunity cost of convenience, right? So you want to reduce that to the minimum. So we want to make it extremely convenient so that if people who want to live on a Bitcoin standard, they have the tools.
Yeah. Yeah, and I really liked what you said there because it's true. I think, people um think about, okay, if I live on Bitcoin and the Bitcoin price crashes 10% on a day or whatever it is, losing 10% in purchasing power. But as you mentioned, it's like, yeah, okay, if you're spending Bitcoin on that day, you may lose 10%. But if you spend Bitcoin every day, what we've seen is over time, Bitcoin goes up to the right extremely, right? And compared to fiat currencies like the dollar or the euro, you're drastically outperforming them. So I really like that mindset of saying like it's not important on what Bitcoin does on a daily basis because yeah, there may be days where it goes down or goes up or whatever, but the trend is up and to the right. And I think I really like that also for myself actually because I've never really thought of it that way. That like yeah, if you live on a Bitcoin standard, there's going to be a lot of fluctuations, but the general trend is in the right direction, right? Especially if you compare it to fiat currency. So I really like that mindset. I think also, something that, and it's up to you if you're willing to discuss this because I think for everybody it's a bit personal. But I think another thing that is obstructing people from really utilizing Bitcoin to the full extent is like one, you have the opportunity cost that you mentioned, which is like actually being able to spend Bitcoin, having the means to, if I want to fully live on Bitcoin, to be able to do that and make it as easy as having just a debit card and a bank account, like in today's world, right? And I think we will get there. It's only a matter of time. Businesses like yourselves, but then we also saw recently like Cash App and Square enabling like more merchants to be able to accept Bitcoin. And I think more like online payments are going to be able to be done through Bitcoin. And I think it's only a matter of time before Bitcoin is widely accepted everywhere. But then I think the other problem that you have, and this is kind of going back a bit to the analogy we had earlier, where it's like you're living in a system where still governments are in control and are able to decree what is legal tender. And in most countries, Bitcoin is not legal tender. So you still have to convert, your Bitcoin to fiat some way to be able to spend it, unless the merchant accepts Bitcoin directly. How do you deal with that aspect? Because there are other implications there that are important to consider. And this is a question, of course, it's very personal. So if you don't want to answer, you don't have to. But I'm just curious a bit from your perspective on like how you deal with that part of the equation as well, and dealing with governments and different legislations and different rules and that kind of prohibits still Bitcoin from being spent as a legal tender.
Yeah, so like it's more like how much can you be self-sovereign with the existing system, or where you choose to live, or where you choose to reside. So you made a choice to live in that country for various reasons, and then you would optimize most out of your life if you want to be self-sovereign, more towards privacy and self-sovereignty, right? So that's how I see it. Like as long as I hold Bitcoin in my self custody, so it's my Bitcoin. So like I can always take control over it. I can move it anywhere in the world. I can like, it cannot be seized. It cannot be taken from me, and that's important, right? So although there is some regulations, and there are regulations around how I get it, and then I need to report the taxes and everything, but that's the only way, unfortunately. I have to do KYC, and I have to compromise on privacy to like hold Bitcoin. But as long as my Bitcoin is self custody, that's a little bit towards self sovereignty. It's so much better than like leaving euros in your bank account and then your like bank account being pulled off, or your account is frozen and then your euros is gone. So we've been seeing this incidents in Lebanon and other places where like people are not allowed to withdraw their earnings, so which is really terrible. And at least to prevent those kind of incidents, like you at least get Bitcoin in your self custody, and if any such incidents, nothing can happen to you. It's always with you, and that's the power you hold. And yeah, and liquidating Bitcoin and spending Bitcoin, there is of course there's a lot of compliance. So from a compliance or a regulator perspective, they put a name of like preventing money laundering and terrorist financing. So irrespective of whatever reason they're doing what they're doing, that is what unfortunately is a fact. And this will change only if people start accepting Bitcoin, and then there's a circular economy that happens. But for the circular economy to happen, there's a chicken and egg problem, as you rightly said. Merchants don't accept Bitcoin. So as any chicken and egg problem, there's always needs to be pushed on both sides. So now we are building tools for users to liquidate Bitcoin and spend. So there's always a little bit pain. It's not as easy as like taking out a Lightning wallet, scanning and paying. You have to convert and you have to tap your debit card. So with this pain, you always tend to ask, hey, do you accept Bitcoin? It's just easier to send my Bitcoin. And the fact that you're asking, can you accept Bitcoin, can only be triggered when you're really going through the pain of liquidating the Bitcoin. And the merchant, we are working on like allowing merchant to accept Bitcoin without having to hold Bitcoin. We allow them to auto convert so that they can pay their suppliers, or they can business expenses in euros, because as I said, no one else accept Bitcoin. So we are like pushing on both. Like it's a constant effort. More circular economies are coming thanks to a lot of community leaders doing circular, like so many initiatives, educating merchants, educating customers to pay in Bitcoin, and educating merchants to accept Bitcoin. So where we land is just building tools so that the merchants can accept Bitcoin and not hold Bitcoin. That's a starting point. So as this both side, spending Bitcoin and accepting Bitcoin, gets more and more adopted, like people start accepting Bitcoin and people start paying in Bitcoin, we're moving towards more circular economy where it's just peer-to-peer, and you don't have to worry about self-custody. You don't have to worry about any KYC or anything like that. but there's always a transition time. So that's unfortunate, but I think all we could do is we could do most we can if we really want that world to be possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a good point. I think it is a battle because I think, and that's I think again one of the struggles of being a Bitcoiner is like again you're kind of already living in the future, but you're still dealing with the traditional system. Um, and I'm going to be honest, like for me, I think what prevents myself from living on a Bitcoin standard is less the volatility aspect, because as you mentioned, I think over time, it's the best way to save and also to spend. And we do, if I think if you do want to go to a future where Bitcoin is the base money of the world, then I think you also have to be an early pioneer and help in those initiatives. Um, but obviously, I think the biggest thing that's holding myself and probably a lot of people back as well is kind of the elephant in the room, and that's the taxes part, right? In most part of the world, Bitcoin is treated as an asset and not as a legal tender. So you're still dealing with tax logistics. And if you're using Bitcoin to buy your coffee and buy your groceries, and if you're doing multiple transactions a day, hundreds of transactions a month, let's say, um, it can be extremely, extremely complicated to then when taxes come around, if, and this is kind of the big but, right? Like if you want to be compliant, because I know also I've had people on the show that say, I'm already in the system, like, you know, I'm already moved on, let's say. Um, but if you want to be compliant and don't want the tax man to come knocking on your door, you still have to deal with that. You don't have to answer personally, like what your perspective is, but like, is that something that you also encounter a lot, like as kind of a problem towards that next step of like really living on a Bitcoin standard?
For sure, this is a very valid problem, and this is like painful for a lot of people, and including me. Like whenever I like spend with like pay with Bitcoin, there's a sell event happening, and that triggers a capital gain, at least in Estonia and most of the countries. So things are changing with countries. Like few countries are like no capital gain tax or something like that. They're like introducing some laws, but that's on a different note. But the problem still exists. So again, this is the tax on capital gain, right? So it's more about the pain of going through all the understanding capital gains and like actually accounting for it, and then paying, like letting your auditors know exactly, like, or like your accountants know exactly how much the capital gain is there, what's the buy rate, what's the sell rate, and all this. So it's definitely painful, and it's a problem that we want to solve as well. So as I told, we're just providing tools to live on Bitcoin standards, and this is something that we want to solve. So the way we are solving is we are not tax advisors, of course. Like it's extremely complicated, especially in EU with multiple jurisdictions. So it's not easy to do that. We, from a technology perspective, or like from an innovative perspective, we partner with some crypto accounting tools like Coinly and other tools where our export directly plugs into their format, and then you get a report and you choose a country, and then it solves it for you. So Bringin transactions can plug into that tool to make your life easier.
Hmm.
And yeah, so this taxes on the capital gain. So if you made a capital gain, then you have to pay tax, right? So I understand. So now uh, there is there is an upside of living on Bitcoin standard, but still there is like tax that you have to pay, like 10% of your upside, or 20%, or anything depending on the jurisdictions. That's unfortunate, but at least the logistics of doing it, we are solving it, and hopefully if more and more users are using Bitcoin, and it's just a pressure that the states should reduce the capital gain tax, and that's happening in few states of like Czech Republic recently reduced the capital gain tax, and in Netherlands there's no capital gain tax. So, or like they're introducing more rules if you buy and sell in the same day or same month, or if there's no capital gain tax on the Bitcoin you purchased 1 year back or something like that, right? So things are moving towards something that's less cumbersome, but yeah, that's a problem, and it's unfortunate. But we want to build tools to make it easy, not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily remove the problem, and there's nothing much we could do, unfortunately.
Yeah. No, and it is a problem, and I think I do think you're also right. I think more people start using Bitcoin, as more merchants start enabling Bitcoin. I think that's the beautiful part about Bitcoin. It's the global phenomenon. So you have this beautiful game theory in effect, where like I think in order to compete and to stay competitive, the countries that are going to want to do that are going to have to adopt Bitcoin in the best way possible. We see that in El Salvador, the impact that that's having. With the new administration in the US, we're seeing a lot of positivity coming from there. My hope is personally, I think the EU, especially lately, unfortunately, has been a lot slower in this. And I'm not super optimistic that that will change quickly. But I do think that if countries like the US, I do think, I mean, like if I were the president of a country, I would just make Bitcoin legal tender. Obviously, that's the source of your tax revenue that you're losing from capital gains taxes. But I think the influx of innovation, the influx of talent and business capital and people capital that come into that as a result of it would outweigh the tax revenue that you get from capital gains tax, right? And I think my idea is that over time, as more individuals start to move to a Bitcoin standard, more companies start to move to a Bitcoin standard, and kind of this whole fiat system gets exposed for what it is. Countries will move to a Bitcoin standard, allow it as legal tender, and I think that's when kind of the race is on, right? That's when companies like yourself can be able to operate without limitations, without, you can just have a Bitcoin native bank without having to even worry about, oh no, but I need to still have compatibility with an IBAN and a debit card, a Visa debit card. Like if I could, my dream is that I can just go to my supermarket and, like you said, just scan a lightning QR code, pay my bill or whatever, and be done with it. And there's also obviously privacy aspects that are there as well. So, that's my hopeful vision for the future. I don't know if you kind of see it differently or how you kind of see it kind of taking shape.
Uh, So, with past decades, people are more moving towards more open to moving or moving across the continents, and they're moving towards places where they like they're considering multiple factors for settling down or for living, right? So this will be one of the primary factors as well. So if there's a if for a business or for even mainly for the business, for example, if the countries are not tax friendly, or if there's capital gain tax and you can't operate and you can't support innovations, like it's very easy for a person to move the company to, or like incorporate the company in the states that's more favorable for the innovations than restricting with a lot of capital gain tax. So this is with the companies, it's much easier, and I think that'll happen with every individual as well. So people will start moving to the states which values users' sovereignty and privacy, or like encourage it, like who doesn't punishes like users for
Yeah.
like using Bitcoin or any superior forms of money. So people will like states eventually will feel the pressure when that option is happening. When other states are like adopting it, and then they obviously feel the pressure, and they will have to eventually do it. So it's just a gradual process. It takes time. It's one of the biggest revolution that mankind has ever seen. It's happening all over the world simultaneously. Grassroots level communities are working on circular economies. So if it's one of the biggest revolutions, probably it'll take more time than any of the revolutions before. So, and this also involves all the states in the that exists to cooperate. It's not easy thing to do. So it's just been formed over centuries, right? So it takes time.
Yeah.
It's a gradual moment, but it's unfortunate right now. We live in a world where we don't experience the convenience of not having capital gain taxes, but hopefully before we, as in near future, we can experience that before we die.
Yeah. Hopefully. I'm hoping that we can live in Yeah, that we will see the future where we will be able to just, live in this Bitcoin world, and where we can just transact freely without, any government being able to dictate what we can and can't do. So yeah, I fully agreed there. So I know we're short on time here. So the last question that I usually ask all my guests at the end of the show is, this is a time period where we'll have a lot of new people come into the space. Everybody is, yeah, more and more adoption is happening worldwide, which is amazing. And for those people entering the space, what advice would you have for them? Yeah, coming in.
Mm. If you're new to Bitcoin, learn self custody. I know this sounds doesn't sound very familiar, but learn self custody. Uh, Try to learn more about the wallets and how self custody works. So without that, you can't. It's you're not taking complete advantage of the new money. So learn self custody, set up your self custody wallet, and start your Bitcoin journey.
Awesome. I love it. Cool. Well, Prashanth, thanks so much for coming on the show. I will of course link your profiles, but also Bringin and everything you guys are doing over there. Anything else you want to mention to my listeners, or where they can find you?
Uh, so just one final mention. I think you mentioned about the Bitcoin Pizza Day, how you paid for the pizza and the Bitcoin cost, right? So it's like if you go to the technicality of like playing on Bitcoin Sand, it's like you earn in Bitcoin and you're spending on the same month. So it's like it, instead of keeping it in euro and spending it in euro, you're converting it Bitcoin and converting it back to euros and spending it. It's not technically spending like you paid so much for Bitcoin, so it doesn't account for like you're converting entire income into Bitcoin, which probably was not the case when you bought pizza back then. So
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, I mean, it's true. Like, I actually saw a clip yesterday or something, funny enough, from it. And I mean, yeah, he was saying that it was at the time, yeah, what, like 30 bucks or something, for 10,000 Bitcoin, which is absurd if you think about that now. But it's exactly like you mentioned, right? People think now of like, man, 10,000 Bitcoin, you paid two pieces, but that was before anybody even knew what Bitcoin was and was even using it. So whether he spent that 30, 40, dollars from his wallet or from Bitcoin, it would have been indifferent. He would have spent that money anyway. So I do agree. It's just a whole mindset thing, and I think it is this balance as a Bitcoiner trying to, because you understand where it's going, especially now more than ever. But then it's also this time preference thing of, right, like lowering your time preference and all those things that come into it. But yeah, everybody has their own, unique journey, and I appreciate you coming on to share yours, and yeah, I found it very insightful, and I hope my listeners will as well.
thanks, Stefan. Thanks for having me. It was great chatting with you.
Awesome. Thank you.